Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another AFL Tube live stream. Tonight, going to be doing something a little bit different. Just for a bit of fun and for the sake of reflecting on the season, I'm going to be ranking in a tier list all the games of the 2024 AFL season. The fact that all of the Saints games, home games are in F, are crazy. Oh well, that's football. But we'll find out where they actually are. Will you be live before Port versus Collingwood? I'll be live during Port versus Collingwood because this won't be done quick enough. But yeah, fortunately I won't be watching that for this. I'll just be doing this. G'day AFL legend. Welcome to the live stream. Good to see you here. Yo says R3X1C. Yo. Family Guy's Scary Theories says finally. Apologies for that. Thought before you said last stream of the year. I did. We'll just say it was just last stream of the season, not the year. Because the year's still going. Aussie Sports Channel, hello, welcome. Do I have a mullet? I think I just realised. I sort of do. It's sort of weird because you can notice it less now. But yeah, I definitely need a haircut now that you mention it because my hair's way too long right now. Way longer than ideal. When am I getting started? In one moment. Just reading a few chats and then we'll get into it. You did the Mac Andrew comment. Oh, nice. Yeah. Will I start? Yes, alright, I'll start. Everyone's wanting me to start, so I'll start. Alright, well, hang on. We'll go like this. That's a good setup. That's nice. Alright, I'll go through it. It's listed every team's home games. We're going to rank the games more based on how close they were or how entertaining they were. A mix of both. Obviously, probably more entertaining would be the answer, except obviously the close games are more likely to be up the top. How old am I? I'm 16. Turning 17 shortly, but still 16. Please make a video on the Eagles because I support them. What sort of video on the Eagles? What specifically would that be? Am I having technical problems? This is no good. Alright, we've had some problems. Let me know if it's working. there we go. All right. I don't know. I really don't know what happened there, but I guess we better make a start before something bad happens again. Yeah. All right. Let's start from the very beginning. We'll start with opening round. It's reminding me of like the Brownlow, the way I'm doing this. But anyway, so we have opening round, the first game, Sydney versus Melbourne would be the first game. There it is, down here. And so it was a decent game for a while. Sydney got away in the last quarter, won by 22 points. Two sides who were highly fancied at the time, at least. Didn't remain that way for Melbourne, but we'll start with a B. That's a B. That's a very B game of football. D, says AFL legend. I wouldn't give that a D at all. That's very harsh. That's still a very decent game of football. Because I'm thinking, or maybe, B or C. Because I'm thinking, the fact it was, close for a lot of the game. I mean, it wasn't the highest, most exciting football, but 27-20 at halftime. Okay, well, if you reckon D, I'll put it in C. But I wouldn't do any lower than C. Definitely not. Alright, second game, Brisbane versus Carlton. This was a good game. I'm going to put this in S because it, a huge comeback, like 46-point comeback. That's one of the games of the year, so immediately that's got to be S. 1 point game, match-winning goal, Harry Mackay. The two teams who played in a prelim the year before. So, if there's only going to be a handful of games in S, that's got to be one of them. Yeah, top 5 game. I'd probably say it was a top 5 game of the season. Gold Coast versus Richmond. This one, E. It was a bit of a funny game because Gold Coast got a long way in front and then Richmond came back, and at times Richmond looked a chance, but it's hard to put it any higher really because just a bit of a nothing game, to be honest. We didn't know quite how bad Richmond were then, but anyway, YouTube trying to sell you milk. Nah, YouTube's not trying to sell you milk. I'm trying to sell you milk. GWS versus Collingwood. I'll put this in C as well. It was a slight upset, I think, at the time. GWS beating Collingwood. Yeah, low C. So I'll put it behind Sydney versus Melbourne. But, yeah. Collingwood best saying F. Fair enough. Yeah, anyway. Guess we'll keep going. So that's it for opening round. 1 good game, 2 mediocre games, and 1 pretty poor game. Let's get into it. Round 1. Carlton versus Richmond. Now this was a good game. I'll put it in A because it was a close game. I guess Carlton were the favourites and ended up winning, but good effort by Richmond. At the time, Richmond weren't meant to be that bad, so it wasn't overly surprising at the time, but yeah, good game of football, close. Richmond were in front at 3/4 time, but yeah, good game of footy to begin round 1. The following night, Collingwood versus Sydney, another upset, which gave Collingwood an 0-2 start. I'll put it in D, which might be because Collingwood caught up late, like it was even bigger margin, but upset, which makes it a bit more interesting. Because obviously, any given game of football, I'm going to put a bit higher if it was an upset, because it's more likely to be, like if it's an upset, at least it's a bit more interesting than a game that was, a game that was, just the favourite winning. Essendon versus Hawthorn. I reckon that's a clear C. Clear C. Essendon were... I mean, it's close to a B, but actually I'll put it... Okay, we'll put it where it belongs in C. I guess there. Because there was two sides who weren't fancy very much then. It was close for most of the game. Well, that's sort of the thing. It's sort of similar to Sydney-Melbourne. But I guess I'll put it above Sydney-Melbourne because it was higher scoring, I guess. We wasted a lot of chances in that game. Had 6 more scoring shots, so I could have definitely won, but... But yeah, I guess it's a touch and go between B and C. Top of C I think is fair enough. GWS versus North Melbourne. GWS winning comfortably. North put up a fight but never really were a chance. I guess that's another E. It's the same sort of thing, not an absolute blowout, but another boring game, I guess. Geelong versus St Kilda. That's another A because that was a very good game. I'll put it below. Probably put it below Carlton and Richmond, but yeah, definitely a B because low scoring. Well, wasn't that low score? Yeah, it was still an 8-point game. So, And again, I haven't put anything in B yet. But yeah, I'll think about changing. I mean, I can change it later on, I guess, if I want to. It's sort of difficult to know where to put these sorts of games. But Geelong did lead most of the game, which makes it not such a good game. But Gold Coast versus Adelaide. Now this one, Gold Coast only won by a goal, but they led the whole game and it was wet and it was a really weird game. So weird that I'm going to put it in B because I don't really know what else to do with it because it was a close finish in the end. Adelaide came storming home and could have been an absolute robbery, but a 1-goal game, but such a weird, bizarre, boring for most of the game, and then but weird in a memorable way. So G maybe. I don't know. Maybe it'd be weird. I should put a W for weird. If there's just unusual games that are hard to rank. Gold Coast Adelaide should be a low C. But the thing is, like, a game like that, everyone's still... Like, it's a boring game in the sense of low scoring, wet, scrappy football, but I can't put it any lower than B if it's, a close game such that... Well, Essendon... You say Essendon Hawthorn's much better, but in the final minutes of Essendon Hawthorn, you know who's going to win the game. In Gold Coast Adelaide, you don't. It's a, more of an exciting finish, so it's got a slight edge in that way. Melbourne Bulldogs, that was a decent game for a while, I believe, but then Melbourne comfortably pulled away in the end. That's another D, probably. Not a terrible game, but just, Melbourne too good in the end on that occasion. now we'll start going through them a bit quicker now because I think uh, yeah, got to get through them. Port Adelaide West Coast. That was a pretty ordinary game. Harley Reid's first game. That was one thing that was a talking point, but I'll put it in E because it's still only a 50-point margin. But yeah, am I going to rank St Kilda Gold Coast B? Yes, because it was a. Should I not? Because here's the thing. There's two different ways of ranking. Just because it wasn't a high-scoring game, because it wasn't high-scoring means it was a bad game for a game that was close, but, it's still a game that people are watching near the end. St Kilda Gold Coast, it was boring, but, people were watching at the end because they wanted to see what happened. Controversial finish in that one as well. So, yeah. Fremantle, Brisbane. I'd say this is another... that's a tricky one. I'll put it in B. Because it was a funny game. Because it was a comeback from Freo. They were 4 goals down earlier on. And then got on top. But then again, it was probably more... I can't put it a tier above Essendon Hawthorn and Sydney Melbourne because it's quite similar to both of them. So I'll put it top of C, but an intriguing game as well. And another upset at the time that was a bit of an upset. So yeah. Round 2 now. We're into round 2, everyone. How exciting. St Kilda versus Collingwood. This is a tricky one because St Kilda got further in front. I think this is a very clear B. Yeah, exactly. AFL legend agrees. I don't see... it's as clear as a B gets, I'd say. It was, 15-point margin, which is a very B. Another upset. Collingwood did catch up late, so it was a bigger lead for St Kilda. So the margin sort of flattered Collingwood a bit in the end in terms of how exciting the game was. But Collingwood best just, likes the F button for those games. All right, Adelaide versus Geelong. Another B. Pretty similar games, really. But yeah, another, that was a slight upset as well, that one. The Adelaide Oval, 19 points. Adelaide Geelong should be C. But why? It was sort of... Adelaide never got within range late in the game. They got to 14 points, I remember. But it was 26 points with 1 minute left. Yeah, I know. But it was also 14 points with 5 minutes left or something. So, that's why it's tricky. But, the same thing could be said about St Kilda Collingwood because it was 15 points in the end, except, St Kilda led by more, 33 points earlier. So it's that sort of game where, it's, it's hard to analyse because they're still in it, but it was never a thriller. But yeah, I'll put it at the bottom of B because it was never exciting right at the end. Did I watch the Footy Siren stream 2 days ago? No, I didn't. What did he do on that one? Okay, North Melbourne Fremantle. I'll give this one a C. In the end, the favourite wins, but North were a long way in front, which meant it was quite interesting. But Freo got on top. Was a decent game though, so I'll slot it into the middle of C there. North Freo did have a big comeback, yeah. But it's, in the end, it sort of wasn't exciting near the end or anything. Freo had the game won by 3/4 time. So, a very big third quarter by Fremantle, but hard to put it higher than C. Sort of tricky now looking back on it, though, because I might actually... Because some of these games, like, some of the C's and B's are sort of a bit funny because, I don't know, it all seems a bit random. Like, they're clearly, the B's and C's are both clearly better than the D's, except the B's and C's are sort of a bit more interchangeable. But I guess all those games at B were slightly closer, so that's one thing when it comes down to it. Hawthorn versus Melbourne, no, that was not a good game of football. That's an E. That's the bottom of E. It's approaching an F. I'm still not going to give it quite an F because I feel like games that were like... Because that was a bizarre game. We were still in the fight for a while as in only, 4 or 5 goals down. But, like, the thing is, that's still a more interesting game than... we're going to have some games... We haven't had any yet, but the absolute blowouts are the ones that are F. Because the ones where... the losing side was never at all even close to it. The games where, like by half time it was a more than 10 goal margin. A lot of you are saying F, but I'll keep it at the bottom of E, and we'll just wait till we get a real F for that one. Sydney versus Essendon. That one... I'll put it in C. That's another C. I'll just pop it in there. I'll put it bottom of C because in the end, the favourite one, it wasn't that. It was high scoring, which was something, but there's nothing really noteworthy about it other than that. Other than the, high score, in terms of how good of a game it was. Because both teams scored 100 and it was heated. It was heated, that's one thing, yes. It's just tricky to put these games... I feel like a lot of this ranking, because B and C is very interchangeable. Like, those at B and C are the ones that could be, you could sort of... it's sort of the two most similar tiers of any so far, but I feel like it's just I'm distinguishing between B's and C's just by saying whether it was interesting late or not. Like, for instance, Gold Coast Adelaide, if Adelaide didn't come back late, that would be a D, but because it was a close finish, Sydney Essendon was a better game than Adelaide Geelong, in my opinion. See, that's a good point. That is a good point. Actually, I don't think Adelaide Geelong deserves to be in B. I don't think it quite does. So I'm going to put it... I'll put it top of C because it's a good point you make. And in terms of ranking the different tiers, it's sort of... that means a bit less. It's just putting them in the right tiers. Western Bulldogs versus Gold Coast. This one's... I'll put it top of E. It's either top of E or bottom of D. Gold Coast were never in the game. That game at the time was a 50-50 because the Bulldogs hadn't done so well the week before. Gold Coast had won their first two, but little did people know at the time that Gold Coast literally could not win away for most of the season. So yeah. Richmond, Port Adelaide. Another interesting one. Richmond did lead, but then Port got on top. It was still close for a while in the last quarter. I'll put it bottom of C. There's nothing really memorable or noteworthy about that game in particular. So, it's C because it was high scoring, yeah. And because it was still relatively close for a lot of the game. Like, I feel like a C if we're talking in terms of margins, C's about the sort of game, like 5 or 6 goals maybe, on average. But then again, you've got some games are a bit closer, but it's all sort of whoever kicked the last couple of goals. But, yeah. Anyway, last game of round 2, we have West Coast versus GWS. That is another... I'll put it below... Actually, I'll put it above Hawthorn and Melbourne. Hawthorn and Melbourne was still a worse game. But yeah, near the bottom of E. It's a very E sort of game. I think that's the biggest margin we've had so far, but it's a very E sort of game. Just the margin gradually got bigger and bigger, and the Giants won comfortably. Brisbane Collingwood, this is a good game. I reckon this is straight into B. Brisbane Collingwood. Maybe the top of B, I'd say. That's the top of B. It was a good game for quite a long time. Still ended relatively close, but Collingwood getting their first win on the board. Two sides who, the grand final rematch, and both sides hadn't won a game at that point. So I don't know about Brisbane Collingwood. It was sloppy. Well, I mean, regardless, it's, grand final rematch. Both teams were winless. I don't think it was that sloppy, really. It was still... I mean, it's funny. Maybe I don't care as much about that, but to me, it was still a pretty decent game. So, yeah, top of B. If it was a bit closer, it'd probably be an A, but 20-point margin, good win for Collingwood. I think it's sort of straight into B. North Melbourne versus Carlton. North Melbourne versus Carlton, we'll put that one another E. It's still not quite F territory. It's funny, we haven't had the massive blowouts yet. But North kicking a pretty high score in that game. D or E? Well, I think D would be generous. But I'll put it... I mean, it was pretty high scoring, so I'll put it at the top of E because... yeah. North Carlton is D. Well, it was very high scoring, except... It is either bottom of D or top of E, but I feel like it's the massive favourite one. North were never looking like they were going to win at all. So, like the two games I've got in D right now are at least sort of more contested games in the sense that people actually gave the side who lost a chance. But, that one's a bit different. The huge favourite won and won comfortably. So, Footy Flicks 2, you missed all the streams. Oh no. Well, you're here now, aren't you? That Aussie dude, hello, welcome. Fremantle, Adelaide, I'll put in D. That's a D. 35-point margin, but a very, very ordinary game. Was a bit close for a while, so maybe I should put it higher in D just for that. But in terms of the game itself, pretty ordinary game. So Aussie legend saying F. The thing is, to me, that's still so much better. That's light years better than a game that's, that game was a 10-point margin at three-quarter time. That's so much better than a game that's, over at three-quarter time. That game was still on. Freo pretty much led for most of the game, or at least, hit the front during the second quarter. That's right. Adelaide did start all right in that, but then I think it's a D. I think it's a very clear D in my mind. Essendon St Kilda, bottom of A. St Kilda were the favourite in that one, but it was, relatively close to 50-50 again. Decent game. St Kilda led the whole way. Essendon hit the front late. Maybe not the best football people have ever seen, but a good, interesting game of football that could have gone either way. Port Adelaide, Melbourne. That's another one I'll put at the bottom of A. So we're getting into a rhythm here. Oh no, not the bottom of B, the bottom of A. But yeah, anyway, couple of better games now. All right, here we go. We're gonna add our first F, and it's coming in the way of the Western Bulldogs versus West Coast. West Coast got a bit better after this game, but this game was pretty terrible. Nothing interesting really at all. The Bulldogs, The Bulldogs. I mean, there would have been a couple of games at least as bad as this later on, but nothing noteworthy. In a funny sort of way, it's hard to tell, but like in a funny sort of way, a game that's like well over 100-point margin is almost more interesting than that, because at least it's interesting in the sense that it's a ridiculously big margin and a weird game. But like a game like that, like what's noteworthy about it? The Bulldogs kicking, 16-10, 106. That's not a ridiculous score. West Coast kicking 312, just boring all round. Bulldogs winning easily. Nothing noteworthy at all. What do I think was the best game of the season? I've just read there. Well, we'll have to find out, won't we? Swans v Saints was not a was S. Not gonna lie. It probably that is one that could be S. But Hawks Pies was also S. For me, it was. The second one, I'm assuming you mean, because I think you're a Hawthorn supporter. But yeah, anyway. The Brisbane semi and prelim could be the best couple of games of the year, or at least up there. That is a good point. Anyway, can't read comments. Got to keep moving. Richmond versus Sydney. Ooh, this is a good game of football. I'm gonna put it. Okay, top of A. It was an upset at the time. In retrospect, it could be S because, one team made the grand final and one team finished bottom. But very good game, top of A, good game of footy. Hawthorn Geelong, that's another C. That's a very, very clear C. It was interesting in terms of the rain delay, but where should I pop it? I'll slot it right in there. Might move Sydney Essendon a bit higher, at least to there. But yeah, just slotting it right in there with C. Adelaide Melbourne into round 4. Adelaide Melbourne. That was a 15 points in the end. It wasn't close though. Adelaide came back quite well late, but were never in it much. 15-point margin, I don't think it can be a B. I think it's got to be a C. And really only somewhere in the middle there. It was a 50-50 game from what I remember. I think I tipped Adelaide, but yeah, it's just got a slot right in there in C. Brisbane versus North Melbourne. That's either what do we reckon? I'm either going to put it bottom of E or top of F. It's one of those two. I might put it. Actually, I think it's top of F. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as probably the Bulldogs and West Coast would have to be marginally worse if you were comparing them. But Brisbane did well to get their first win, but North were never in the game. Massive underdog. Favourite wins easily. No one's watching the second half of that game, or at least not paying close attention to the second half of the game unless you go for either side. Port Adelaide versus Essendon. Ooh, that's another shocker there. These gather round shockers, not too good. And we'll put that. It was interesting in the sense that it took Port a while and then they absolutely blitzed them. I remember in this game it was like was like 4-4 to like 5 straight or 6 straight or something, and then they got away. I'll put it bottom of E because it's one of those games where, yes, the favourite did win easily, but it wasn't as much a Hello, Saurus. Welcome, Saurus. Welcome to the live stream. Good to see you here. But anyway, yeah, it wasn't a massive favourite as such. It wasn't like a game that no one was paying attention to. West Coast versus Sydney. I'll put that in. It's got to be somewhere in the C's. I reckon AFL Legend reckons bottom of C. Alright. Although, I mean, the big favourite did win in the end. I was surprised. I was very surprised by that game because at that point everyone thought West Coast were absolutely dreadful. But then they did make a bit of a game of it. By the way, I might get another drink after this, so I'll be gone for a minute after round 4. But I'll just get this quickly and then I'll be back in a minute and then we'll keep going. But anyway, Fremantle versus Carlton. This is straight into A. Fremantle robbed was a lot of the talk there. A more memorable game. I'll put it there. I'll put it second in A. Yeah. Can you be a mod? I don't want to hand in a mod just like that, but if you can stay and watch a lot of this stream, you might be able to get one. If you remind me, because I might not remember, but yeah, I'll hand it out. I hand out maybe later. That decided who made finals in the end. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It's funny how things can play out like that. But yeah, and then also another funny thing was the Fremantle Collingwood draw. If either Fremantle or Collingwood won that game rather than it being a draw, Carlton wouldn't have made the finals. So anyway, Freo would have done better in the elimination final. I don't know, they were in pretty terrible form then. Hockball, Skibbity Sigma. Well said, Phil. Anyway, let's keep going. Another pretty good game here at the Adelaide Oval that night. The Western Bulldogs versus Geelong. Wasn't overly... I don't know, I feel like that game isn't remembered as much as it feels like it should be. It's got to be an A because it was within a goal. Geelong did lead for most of the game though. It's just about where I'm putting it here. I'll put it there, behind Essendon, St Kilda, but ahead of Port Adelaide and Melbourne because it was within a goal. Most underrated games all year. I agree, it's funny. Like, no one really talks about that game much. The two sides who were, contenders as well. So yeah. Gold Coast versus GWS. That's not a ripper, that one. Where is it? There it is. It's bottom of C. Bottom of C. It was relatively close for a while, and then in the last quarter, the Giants pulled away. It was actually goal for goal a bit there. It was good for 3 quarters, yeah. Actually, I'll put it a bit higher in C. I'll just move it up here a bit, just because it was a decent game for a while. Pretty high scoring. Not a terrible game, so I will put it in there nicely in C. But it did seem pretty inevitable to me that the Giants would win that, at least from my perspective. Richmond versus St Kilda at Norwood. It's this one, round 4. I'll put that in the bottom of B. Actually, I'll put it ahead of St Kilda Collingwood because it was close at the end. So it's got to be in B. Wasn't very great. Well, Richmond did lead at half-time 5-1, which does say it wasn't a great game in terms of scoring. But yeah. Yeah. St Kilda were the favourite. They got on top in the end and managed to get a much-needed win. They couldn't afford to lose that one. Gold Coast was in the finals. We would have won every game. Fair enough. Fair enough, Phil. Sure thing. Anyway, so I've got one more for round 4, and then I'm going to get myself another drink because this one's nearly finished. And this is going to be a long season. Hawthorn Collingwood in gather round. Collingwood Hawthorn in gather round was S plus, no bias. Was interesting for a few reasons, but in the end, the favourite won and led the whole game. Hawthorn came storming home, couldn't quite get over the line, much to my disappointment. Jack Ginnivan against his old side added a bit of excitement. First game since what was quite a famous game late last year with, the Dacos tag and Dacos getting injured and Ginnivan moving to Hawthorn, Finn McGuinness. I will put it in. I don't think it's a game within a goal. I feel like has got to be an A for the most part. A 1-goal game is in B in the form of Gold Coast Adelaide, but it's one of your favourite games all year as a neutral. Well, there you go. So I definitely shouldn't put it in B then. I will put it in A. But yeah, there we go. I'll take this break really quickly and I'll see you all in a minute. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in so far, and I'll be back very shortly. All right. Here we go. We're back. So we finished gather round and got another one. And let's keep going. All right. Round 5. I've just realised it's taken probably like half an hour to do this. So if I don't want to be here until the end of the night, I should probably go at a slightly quicker rate. Melbourne versus Brisbane. I feel like D would be slightly harsh in that, I mean, was a bit of a controversial game with the petty, like that sort of thing. Upset at the time as well. Melbourne were a lot more fancy than Brisbane at that stage. Particularly, people still thought maybe Brisbane weren't so good at the MCG, which they definitely proved. There's nothing in that at all. But I think it, even though it was pretty boring for most of it, it's done enough to at least reach C. Even if it's not one of the good C games, I think it's done enough to get C. You predicted Lions to win that. There you go. How am I? I'm good. I'm good, Leon. How are you? All right. Western Bulldogs versus Essendon. Where is it? Here it is. That one is going. Is it enough to be B? I don't think so. It realistically is just going to slot right in the middle of C. Put it there. D's really improved in that game though. Late in the game against Brisbane, but didn't do much. GWS versus St Kilda. 1 point game in the end. That is going right at the bottom of A, the very bottom. It was a 1 point game in the end. They did only get within a point very late. So it's arguably not even an A. It's arguably the top of B, but it's done. I reckon it does enough. 1 point game. Exciting finish with the Saints giving themselves a chance. So for a while it looked like, just a very predictable GWS win, but just enough to give it an A. Carlton versus Adelaide. Now, that was a good game. That was a very, very good game. Back and forth, high scoring, upset. 16 points down in the last quarter and won. I reckon people are saying S or top of A. Look, if S is going to be... S is its own tier. It's as equally much a tier as A is. I'm going to put it in S. I think it deserves to be in S. So I'll put it behind Brisbane Carlton in S, because that was a brilliant game. We got another one that's very, very ordinary here. Bottom of E, Gold Coast Hawthorn. That was a shocking game of football. And not just because I go for Hawthorn. Believe me, that was a terrible spectacle. Never really in it at all. I mean, the halftime margin sort of flattered us a bit, I think. We were like only 4 goals down or something. But, very, very ordinary game of football. Didn't even watch that game. Fair enough. Well, more people would have been watching the other game, which was a pretty good game that night. Port Adelaide versus Fremantle. So I didn't watch much of this game. I watched the very end because it finished after. Got to go. No worries. No worries. You can go. But yeah, this one's got to be an A. I'll put it there. Wasn't the highest scoring game, but AFL Legend reckons bottom of A. But to be fair, Freo did lead most of that game, and it was another Port stealing it late, close game. Probably not quite as high, but I'll put it behind Carlton Richmond. Nicely there in A. Was still very good game of football. Here's another F coming up, ladies and gentlemen. In the form of Geelong versus North. Put it right in there. Poor game of football. Hawks versus Gold Coast as low as it can go. You have to go, but have a good one. No worries, Leon. It's there are still worse games than Hawthorn Gold Coast, like the one just there. Like Geelong, Gold Coast Hawthorn is a game you watch and say, gee, what a boring, uninteresting game. Geelong North, you just don't watch because it's, or at least you just don't even pay attention to because it's that boring. So there's that's the difference between the E and F that I'm talking about here. Again, we're going into the game, you 100% know who's going to win. You know they're going to win easily, and there's just, occasionally in that sort of game, North might put up a fight, but they didn't, and the inevitable result happens. Here's a good game coming up. West Coast first win, Richmond injury hit, but a good game for West Coast. They suddenly showed they were a lot better the week before against Sydney, and then getting a win here. What do we reckon? Top of D? It's either bottom of C or top of D. I'm only going to give it top of D, but yeah, I mean, good for West Coast. Richmond had their injuries, but good on West Coast for getting a win. And they were 4 goals down in that game earlier on, so maybe it should be in C, but I don't know. Maybe not quite. A game that probably didn't mean much overall other than in terms of the season. Bye for like 5 minutes, no worries. But yeah, I think top of D. Alright, that's the end of round 5. North Collingwood was good. It was good. We'll get to that. St Kilda versus the Western Bulldogs. I'll go top of E. It's almost bottom of D just because it was an upset at the time because, the Bulldogs were like very shaky earlier in the year and then, so it was an upset. So that's the one thing that has going its way, and it was a bit of a shock. So interesting, not completely boring in that sense, but in terms of the game itself, yeah, it's crazy how many games there were. I know. It's dawning on me how many games. Adelaide versus Essendon. That's a good game. That is going. I'll put it there. We're going to be here all night. I know we're only up to round 6 and we've been going for at least 40 minutes now. Solid A. Yeah, it's not S. It's not A. Controversial finish with Draper diving on it. Couldn't be more than A. Couldn't be less. It's just A. Collingwood Port. Now this was an unusual game in the sense that Collingwood started not so well and then pounced on Port. In the end, they won very comfortably. Dominant display. That's when it looked like Collingwood were really starting to work their way into the season. Oh, whoops. So I'll put it bottom of C. In C for the comeback, yeah. Bottom of C because it was never interesting really in the last quarter or anything like that at all. But yeah. Melbourne Storm got robbed says hey to me. Hey, Melbourne Storm got robbed. Is that a new name? Are you someone else? Because I'm guessing that's a new name. Melbourne Storm got robbed. Hi, says Geelong Cats fan 21. Hi. Oh, it's you, Sydney Swans. Right. Fair enough. Welcome to the live stream. I thought it might have been you. I did think that. Carlton versus GWS. Straight into B. Straight into B, this one. Very good game against two of the top sides at the time. I'll put it top of C. Top of C? Top of B, sorry. Top of B. What do we reckon? Yeah. GWS did lead for quite a bit of that game, and then Carlton kicked a lot of goals in a row. So top of B, high scoring, 19 points. Top of B. The Giants were still somewhat of a chance in the last quarter. But yeah, so top of B. Brisbane, Geelong. Oof. Was another upset, which I'm giving a bit of credit for upsets, but in terms of the game, it's very ugly. Top of D or bottom of C for this? D? What do we reckon, D? Should I just put it right there? I mean, it is one of those shocking games, so let me know if I should change that, but AFLW scoring, right. Yeah, scoreline, right, yeah. But here we have West Coast Fremantle. Alright, West Coast Fremantle, I'm going to put... West Coast really it was a comfortable win, but it gets the bonus for being such a shock. So I'm going to give it a C. Yeah, AFL legend agrees. There we go. C. Into the Sunday games of round 6. Sydney versus Gold Coast. No need to fuss too much on this one. It's going straight into E. If I can find it. Where is it? There it is. Straight into E. Right there. Yeah. North Melbourne, Hawthorn. Our first win. There we go. One comfortably boring as anything probably for the neutrals. I was just happy to be winning a game of football. I'll put it right in the middle of D. What do you reckon? In the middle of D? E? Actually, okay. It's probably more like there. Actually, probably it's worse than that. Okay, bottom of D. Because it was a game that was talked about in the sense of the fact that neither side had one. Actually, we were the favourite though, so maybe it should be E. It's either bottom of D or top of C. It's another one of those borderline ones. I'll put it top of E because probably, yeah, it was pretty boring. Anyway, we've been going for nearly an hour and we've just reached round 7. So that's going to take a long time at this rate. All right, Richmond versus Melbourne. No discussion here. Richmond were in that game for a while, I believe. They were, yes. They led by a point at halftime, that's right. But it was low scoring and pretty boring. So, top of E. Who's my favourite player? I don't have a favourite player. I love them all. Love them all equally. In your opinion, Tigers D's is the worst game all year. But you can't say that was... Like, it's a game where Richmond were given no chance and led at half-time. So that's a game where... And even up until half-time, it was a shocking game to watch. But it's still more interesting than a game that was never going to be at all interesting ever. So, like, to be F, it has to be a game, I think, where it was never, ever going to be close. I feel like this year when the Lions won the premiership, it wasn't as good because they would have won it last year because last year there was so much hype around the Lions. Yeah. Maybe that'll be it if Hawthorn win next year. But I'd still take it. So, but Guinea and Watto and then Bruce, Kalsha, Gunners, C, Mac, McDonald. Fair enough. Low-key, Richmond should start scouting the Oz kickers. Right. Fave game all year. I'd have to say the elimination final when we beat the Bulldogs, just because we won a final for the first time in 9 years. It's you, says Raiden's World of AFL. It sure is, and welcome back to the live stream. Hockball says, don't worry, Hawks are winning next year. Flag Hawk 25. Nice. Anzac Day must be S. Yes, it is. Definitely. I'm going to put it... Should I put it... I will put it... I'll put it second. Because, to be fair, Brisbane Carlton did have a massive comeback. 46-point comeback, which is a huge comeback. So, I'll put it there. But it was a brilliant game of football. North needs some of their women's players in the AFL. Fair enough. GWS versus Brisbane. This was... the Giants got away with it in the end and won comfortably. It was a good game for a while. It's enough to be bottom of D. It's enough to be bottom of D. But yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Let's keep going with Port Adelaide versus St Kilda. Do I know who Mark Browning is? I've heard of Mark Browning. Don't know much about how he went, but have heard of him. Port Adelaide versus St Kilda. 10-point game, but the favourite wins. Never really looked like winning St Kilda. It's enough to be B, but it's popped right in there. He's your grandfather. All right, nice. Jeez. That's pretty cool. Who's my second favourite team? Says Josh. I don't have a second favourite team as such. It would probably be GWS or something, just because I've got the least against them. I don't have much against them. Hey mate says, something dog clips. Hello, welcome. North Melbourne versus Adelaide. Another pretty boring game. Deep in the E's there, that sort of thing. Geelong versus Carlton. North Adelaide is the same as North Carlton. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It is pretty similar. So maybe it should be... I mean, they're on different sides of E, but I guess they're the same tier at least. Geelong versus Carlton. Very good game. A. Right in there. High scoring, close, good. It's got to be A. Wasn't... If it was any closer, it would probably be S, but it's got to be an A. Fremantle versus the Bulldogs. Once again, another pretty good game. Fremantle winning in the end. It's enough to be B, I'd say. Yeah, enough to be B. I'll pop it in between those two there. Sam Mitchell robbed the Coach of the Year. Well, Clarko never won it, so who knows if it's a good thing to win. Who do I go for? Can't you tell? I'm wearing something for the team I go for. Gold Coast versus West Coast. Once again, deep in the E's. It was a little bit closer than some of the other ones there, but maybe I should put it higher in E at least, but pretty boring game. Hawthorn versus Sydney, another pretty boring game. After this was when we actually seriously improved. But this one, bottom of E or top of F? What do we reckon? Bottom of E or top of F? I think I go for Freo. Is that correct? Could be. Who knows? You love my content. Thank you, Hawkball. I love your name. As a Swans fan, F. Okay, I'll put it top of F. Was 76 points in the end, which is a pretty big margin, but at least it was... I don't know, it was a more unusual game, just the way it happened. I thought we were going all right in that game for a while, and then suddenly... It was weird. It's just the margin just kept growing and growing, just somehow. What are my thoughts on Paddy Cripps' 45 votes? You deserve to win the Brownlow. I don't know if you deserve that many votes, though. Probably. Anyway, got to keep going. Round 8. Adelaide versus Port Adelaide. This one is going... It's got to be C, probably. Got to be C. Probably in the middle of C. That guy kicked a goal and didn't get a high five. Yeah, that's right. That's the right game. Anyway, Carlton Collingwood. I'll put this one in the bottom of S. Because that's another one of the very good games. Two big rivals, winning goal with a minute left. Pretty good game the whole way. So yeah, I think it's got to be there. Anyway, Sydney versus GWS. It's a decent game, but, you know, in the end, Sydney winning and winning, you know, relatively comfortably. I'll put it right in there in the mix of the C's. Sydney GWS top of C, but it wasn't. It was never close enough to be top of C even. So anyway, St Kilda North, pretty boring game. North were in front, I believe, early in that game. But then St Kilda, that's right. But then St Kilda, yeah, did the business, did what they had to do, and I'll put it top of E. Or maybe it's either top of E or bottom of D. Once again, it's one of those ones. But the margin stayed around the same. St Kilda didn't keep going, but the game was over well before it ended. Melbourne Geelong, that was a very good game. Geelong's first loss, bit of a scrappy game at times. There was, the second quarter there wasn't a goal, but still very exciting game in the end. Bailey Fritsch kicking a good goal from the boundary along the ground to win it. So it's in the middle of the A somewhere there. I'll put it there. Hang on. I'll put it there. West Coast Essendon. Without much talk, I'm thinking bottom of A. It's either bottom of A or top of B. West Coast never led, but it was, I think, enough to be A. 1 goal game. Decently interesting. Richmond versus Fremantle. Another pretty boring game. I'll put it bottom of D though, just because... actually, no. Come to look at the... Because at that point, I thought Richmond were a decent chance in that game at that point. So at least it had that going for it. But... Western Bulldogs versus Hawthorn. That would be another A. Huge upset at the time. Our first good win of the year. So that was very, very good. I really enjoyed that. But, yeah. because it was such a big upset, it's nearing the top of A. I'll put it there. I'll put it there. Brisbane versus Gold Coast. This one. Brisbane Gold Coast was a D, somewhere in the D's, maybe middle of D. That's a very middle of D game. Brisbane got a couple of injuries in that game. It's always the same. Are always unpredictable games. It's funny you say that because I think they're. I mean, I thought that at the Gabba it feels very predictable. It seems like that's a very Gabba Q clash sort of game. Got to be E. It was 30 plus all game. See, I was nearly thinking that, but it still seems better than all the games I have in E. It still seems a step above that. Hello, AFL Tube, you're new. Well, welcome, Stitch fan. Welcome. Welcome to the live stream. Carlton Melbourne, a 1 point game, and a lot like GWS and Kilda, another weird 1 point game. Melbourne only got within a point very, very late. Bottom of A? Are we saying bottom of A? I think it's very bottom of A. That's what I reckon. So a 1 point game, so... I mean, if you just look at the scoreboard, it looks like a brilliant game, but... Bottom of S, it's definitely not bottom of S. I don't think. Geelong versus Port Adelaide. That was quite a big upset as well, that one. Port got a long way in front, then Geelong came back, but Port did enough to win. Just pop it right in there. There's 3 Geelong in a row. There you go. So right in the middle of A. As much as I hate to say, get it over with and put Port versus Hawks in S. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Might have to put both of them there. Fremantle, Sydney. Put it right there, bottom of D. Could be an E. Actually, maybe it should be. It has the edge of not being seen as boring before the game. Which Port Hawks game was better? If we're talking purely... One of them was closer the whole way. One of them we led by a lot and there was a huge comeback. But maybe the final gets the edge because it was a final. But then again, the way we choked the first game was pretty something. Hawthorn versus St Kilda. Another not so exciting close game. Bottom of A. Couple of bottoms of A in recent times. Essendon versus GWS. Essendon trailed in this game and then got on top. Another upset. Essendon starting to really make a trend of doing well here. It's high in the B's. I'll put it right in there between those two. Anyway, Richmond Western Bulldogs. That, my friends, is an F. That's the biggest margin so far this season. Yeah. Put it right in there. Gold Coast versus North Melbourne. F. Right there. Suns North, top of C. Well, that would be something. Collingwood versus West Coast. We'll put it in there in F. It's definitely an F. It's just where it goes in F. Higher in F, but F. Adelaide versus Brisbane. Straight away, without even thinking about it, I'm going to put this bottom of S. What do we reckon? It was a draw, very good game. Both sides weren't going as well as they would have hoped at that point. Bottom of S, but in the S, definitely. Gold Coast versus Geelong in round 10. Starting to go a little bit quicker now, but yeah, this one, odd game, 64-point margin, but funnily enough, I'm going to give it a C just because of how high scoring and weird of a game it was. But yeah, Geelong were never really in it after half time, but I just think because of how unusual the full-time score was with Geelong kicking 100 and losing by that much, I'm going to put it in C. Sydney versus Carlton. Funnily enough, Carlton kicked the first few goals of this, but it's hard to do any more than that. I'll put it in D. Should it? Yeah, in D. It's definitely D. Welcome, Dylan. Welcome to the live stream. And a team won by 30 whilst kicking 70 in the same round. Yes. Yeah. That was and they kicked 8-22 as well, the Western Bulldogs in that. Anyway, Collingwood Adelaide. Without even thinking about it or analysing it, it's straight into A, and it's going to go right there. Very good game. Probably less remembered than some other very good games, but straight into A. Carlton Geelong was A tier. That was such a high quality and a 2025 grand final preview. Interesting prediction. But yeah, it is right in there in A. Yeah. GWS versus the Western Bulldogs. Weird game, so it gets bonus points for being weird, but other than that, upset as well, gets bonus points for that, but such a... It's sort of similar in a way to GWS Geelong, despite being so weird. Maybe I should put it in C, because it was... I mean, the Dogs... You know, the Giants were still a chance into the last quarter. So it just feels wrong to put it below Gold Coast and Geelong, which that was well and truly game over. Both teams sucked. I don't know if they did. I think it was just the weather and stuff. But they probably... I mean, the Bulldogs probably were quite good, just couldn't kick goals. St Kilda Fremantle. That's the perfect game to go... I reckon bottom of D is what I'm leaning towards. Bottom of B. Carlton Geelong S tier. Right, yeah. So to clarify, you mean Carlton Geelong as opposed to Geelong Carlton? You mean the game Carlton won by 63 points rather than the game Geelong won by 13 points? Brisbane versus Richmond. Oh, the first one. No, the first one. I can't put it above some of those. I mean, it was a high-scoring, great game. If it was any closer, as I said at the time, if it was any closer, it would be S, but 13 points. Weird game with Carlton's late fight back, but yeah. Brisbane Richmond, bottom of F. Can anyone dispute that? More interesting perhaps by the fact that was 100 points. So like I said before, actually, maybe I should put it higher. AFL Legend reckons E because it was 100 points. So maybe that's it. Maybe 100 points gives it bonus. But I'll put it top of F then. I'll put it top of F. But really, the top is more important than the bottom in terms of... It doesn't really matter where we put these ones because they're all just as bad as each other. Really. So, anyway. Essendon North Melbourne. Bottom of D. Or even top of E. Top of E. North was somewhat in it for a little while. So maybe I should put it there because most of those games in D were never... In E were never really a game at all. So, yeah. Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn. We happy? We happy with that? I don't want to talk about it too much, but fun fact, you watched it on a plane. There you go. Top 2 so far. Yeah, maybe it should be a bit higher. It's actually more memorable than a couple of those, so I'll put it there. I'll put it third. I'll put it behind those two. Just because the comeback and 30's 2 goals down. Yeah. 30 seconds, 2 goals down. West Coast Melbourne, massive upset. Won relatively comfortably. Harley Reid did some freaky things. So I'm going to put it right in the C's. But a bit of bonus, so a little bit higher in the C's because it was a big upset. Where's Collingwood Carlton in Pendlebury's 400th? It's not there yet because we're only up to round 10. Round 11 now. Western Bulldogs versus Sydney. Straight into the top of B. Don't think anyone can dispute that. Top of B. There you go. AFL Legend. That's exactly what I said. I don't know when you said that, whether you'd heard me say that or not, but yeah, top of B. Fremantle Collingwood. I reckon bottom of A. Bottom of... Oh, no, not bottom of A. Bottom of S. Bottom of S. It is S tier, a draw, exciting. This game, the fact that it was a draw made Carlton make the finals. So, S. North Melbourne versus Port Adelaide. Another ridiculously boring game of football. How does it compare with the others? Top of F, I'm going to say. But really, it's just, terrible. Carlton versus Gold Coast. Near the bottom of C. Never really looked like winning Gold Coast. They were somewhat in it for quite a while, but never really looked like mounting a charge. Geelong versus GWS. That's a very good game. Very, very good game. Quite an upset too in Geelong. Two good teams. Top of A. Top of A? I think people are saying mid A. I reckon top of A. Because it's, yeah. This season was so shit, bro. Could have been, if not carried by Cripps. Fair enough. Middle of A? Everyone's saying middle of A. I reckon it's... I mean, to be fair, there are some very good games in the middle of A, so I think it's better than... I'm going to put it between the Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn and Collingwood versus Adelaide. That's where I think it belongs. So still very, very good game. Richmond versus Essendon. Weird how close this was. Just shows why Essendon's percentage was so bad when they were near the top of the ladder, because they were only winning games like this by 2 goals. Inevitable result happened in the end. In the Bs, is that the right thing? I think so. I think it belongs in the Bs. Hawthorn versus Brisbane. Another upset. I think we were like $3 something for that game, which seems weird. This one's another B, I'd say. I'll put it there. Near the top of B. Tipped the Hawks that game. Good. So did I. Good tipping. Yeah, I thought our odds were just crazy for that game. I could not understand it at all. Another pretty poor game here. Melbourne versus St Kilda. Bottom of D. Without even thinking about it. Actually, it was bad enough so that it's in the E's. Hawks have an elite record against Brisbane. Well, that's because we don't play them away, probably. That's probably the reason. Adelaide versus West Coast. 99-point margin. Never close, never interesting. Put it right, just somewhere in F. Doesn't really matter where I put it in F, just somewhere there. Put Adelaide versus Carlton. That one will go in the C's. That was an upset too. It's funny, these games that were just upsets. Not a huge upset, but, Carlton did well there. We'll put it right in the C's. AFL announces all 23 Carlton home and away games will be played at the Gabba and will be permanently relocated from Melbourne. Wouldn't make a difference for Sam Docherty, would it now? Collingwood versus the Western Bulldogs. That one is going near the top of B. Don't think anyone can complain with that. Maybe top of B. Maybe ahead of that. You'd argue A. It's hard to give a 3-goal game A because most of the A's are all like within a goal, if not like 7 or 8 points, or within 2 goals at least. But it is, I think, top of B. Controversial take, could be recency bias AFL tube, but is Will Ashcroft the top 15 AFL player right now? I don't know. We'll find out next year. It's hard. What do you mean by right now? Not for the season, not quite, but we'll find out next year. Do A because of lead changes. It's funny, everyone's saying A. Collingwood didn't lead by that much. It was a very interesting game, but it wasn't close right at the end. All the games in A, with 1 minute to go, it was still interesting. That can't really be said for that. But then again, there's one, Geelong Carlton's in A, and that was probably game over by then. But yeah, maybe I should put it bottom of A, just because also you got another game, like it's quite similar to Geelong Carlton. It was probably a bit better Geelong Carlton, but yeah. Hawthorn versus Adelaide. I enjoyed that game. That was a fun little day out, that one. I'm gonna put it. It's in the middle of the C's, probably lower because we were never really gonna lose it. So I'll put it down there. He's a superstar. He's no Bobby Hill, fake fluke, AFL umpiring, rigging. Ashcroft is better than Harley Reid. A lot of love for Ashcroft in here. Anyway, let's keep going. West Coast versus St Kilda. I was surprised that St Kilda won this at the time. That was I thought because they were that rubbish. Harley Reid got suspended in this as well. it's there in B. Mid C. That's harsh. Because given West Coast were in front and St Kilda turned it. Anyway, Geelong Richmond. This was a funny game. Richmond led this for quite a lot of the game. So it's enough to put it somewhere in here. I'll just pop it there. Melbourne Fremantle. Oh, now this is boring game. I'm going to put it in E, not F. Most 92-point games would be F, except it was so interesting because of how weird it was that it's enough not to be F. Gold Coast versus Essendon. Bottom of A, I'd say. Bottom of A, this one. Essendon were in red-hot form still by that. Biggest win from an underdog just about. Probably would have been 92 points. There were one or two other big ones, but Gold Coast, Essendon, bottom of A. Yeah, I'll put it there. It's another one that's sort of touch and go, bottom of A or top of B. Adelaide versus Richmond. That's going in A. Big upset. We'll put it right there. But, maybe that's slightly too high because it wasn't close right at the end. Looks like Richmond were going to hang on. I'll put it there. Anyway. Western Bulldogs versus Brisbane. This was an upset too. It was when Brisbane... This was the start of Brisbane's long winning streak after their bye. So, bottom of C. Chubby, how's it going, says Rory. Going great, Rory. Just having a great time here, ranking some great games of football and some not so great games of football. But, yeah, thanks for asking. How's it going with you? Hawthorn versus Greater Western Sydney is going right there. Or there, I'd say. Another good game of footy. Close. Somewhat controversial. But yeah, in the A's. West Coast versus North. North's first win. It's got to be in A somewhere. Put it right. I'll put it there. Maybe could be higher, but obviously it wasn't the most. Bottom of A says AFL legend. Yeah, it's nearing the bottom of A. St Kilda versus Gold Coast. We talked about this game before. Straight into the bottom of A because it was a game within a goal. Hear me out. It was a game within a goal, but controversial at the end. Exciting in the last few minutes if you just started watching then, but took a long time to get there. But still, I can't say that's more boring than some of the others. It is either bottom of A or top of B, depending on what we want to do with it, but it's no better than Suns Crows. I would say it is because Suns... Gold Coast versus Adelaide, it always looked like Gold Coast would win and then Adelaide came back late in a low-scoring game, whereas that was close the whole way in a low-scoring game. So, it was still up for grabs more, whereas Adelaide would have had to do something really special to win it. Sydney versus Geelong. Geelong led this game for quite a while. Sydney then eventually, as Sydney did so often then, took control, won the game. Top of C or bottom of B. It's one of those two. I'll give it bottom of B. Just enough to be B because it was a seesawing affair, decent comeback. B. Essendon versus Carlton. Petition to ban at Collingwood Best, AFL Tube. Why would we want to ban Collingwood Best? Is it because you don't like Collingwood? Essendon Carlton goes in the... Essendon shot themselves in the foot a bit in this one. Right in the mix there with the C's. It's funny, it's sort of hard to compare some of these games because, now I look at it, in some ways some of the C's could be better than some of the B's, but I don't know, I guess we just got to keep rolling on. Collingwood versus Melbourne. Top of D. Just that's where it belongs. A Tube 3 votes. Yeah. Round 14. Would have been closer apart from track injury. True, yeah. So it was a remembered game in that sense. King's birthday. AFL Tube one-time premiership player. What a legacy. Would have been closer. Oh, I already read that. Listen to Dylan Kids. Norm Tubey. I'm liking these comments. Favourite Geelong player. Is Emerson Jecker still there? Haven't delisted him yet? Is he? If so, I'll say him of the 2024 team. If he's still kicking around there. I forgot he was there for a while, but I'll give it to Jecker. Delisted, mate. I thought he might have been. Yeah. Because we delisted him last year, and then Geelong got him. It's funny. I spent so little of this year thinking about him. Hasn't played a game. I know he hasn't played a game. I know he didn't play a game for Geelong. But yeah, I'm more likely to prefer a player who didn't play a game than someone who did. Brisbane versus St Kilda. Bottom of... I reckon it sneaks right in there. Richmond Sydney 2020 fidget. What do you mean? I know what happened in that game, but I'm what was it? Oh, the worst AFL game of all time. Oh, I see. That was low scoring, but still, it's like you're saying that's the worst game of all time. The worst game of all time was a game where a team won by, like the Western Bulldogs versus West Coast is still a worse game than that, if we're talking about in terms of how interesting. Anyway, how long is this going to take? We're going to be till midnight. Well, we're more than halfway through the season, or at least we are halfway through the season, and it's only been, an hour and a half, but I'll speed up a little bit if I can. But yeah, if you're leaving, then see you later. Thanks for tuning in. Western Bulldogs versus Fremantle. Big win for the Doggies. Still got to put it above there. Top of top of E, almost bottom of D. Given Gold Coast Geelong in C, then that's got to be at least a little bit higher there. Richmond versus Hawthorn. This will go there. Dusty's 300th. This is taking ages. Sorry. Would you want me to speed up? Why is Hawks vs Port in S? Because it was a good game of footy. I mean, I didn't enjoy it, but that was the worst quality game. Maybe Saints North 2023 was the worst game ever. Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, North Melbourne, Richmond this year could have been worse quality than that. But because Richmond won the flag in 2020, as in terms of how good the footy is to watch in terms of general play, then maybe. But anyway, but yeah, I'm sorry this is taking a long time, and even I'm getting a bit tired by it. But it's got to be done. Round 14, Adelaide versus Sydney. This is going to be a Marty kick 9. Game turned on its head, so it gets a bit bonus points for being less boring in that way. It's very similar, very, very similar to Collingwood Port. Slightly more remembered, probably, so I'll put it just above it in C. So, yeah. Freo were down by 58 and then kicked 6 of the next 7, and then the Dogs kicked 8. Yeah, I did put it in D. How about Hawks Port Power? Hawks 80, 79, but Power just kicked it in 5 seconds. See it. It's in S tier. It's up. It's there. North Melbourne Collingwood, another game someone mentioned in chat before. This one will go um 54-point comeback. If it wasn't that, then yeah, this is so hard to compare to some of these other games. I will still put it bottom of S, but a 54-point comeback is quite ridiculous. So, actually, I have to put it a little bit higher probably. If we're just talking about the game, I'll put it there. Top A? A team came back by top of S. It's not top of S. 54-point comeback, but Carlton coming back by 46 points against Brisbane at the Gabba, being quite a comfortable underdog, is still far more exciting than Collingwood coming. Like, when Collingwood were 54 points down, I still gave them a chance. So, it is S, but it's not the best game. Also, Mark of the Year gives it extra points. True, but not enough to go past any other games. GWS versus Port Adelaide. Pretty boring game, really. It's enough to be in C, but, it's sort of somewhere. Just fit it right in somewhere here. North versus Collingwood also had controversy, that's true. But yeah. Anyway, round 15. Carlton versus Geelong. That is going in the top of E. Actually, it's not. It's in the D's. It's still a big blockbuster game. Still more interesting to see Carlton won by that much. That was before Carlton. We've had consecutive comments in chat, one saying top of S and one saying bottom of F. So, make it S, surely. I'm happily going to keep it where I put it. Um, but yeah, Port Adelaide versus Brisbane. Now this was some result, bizarre result. That's another similar one to Melbourne Fremantle in Alice Springs. This is when the lines really became on. It was clear that they were on. Bonus points for being so bizarre, despite being 79 points. Maybe D might be generous. So then again, if I put that in, look where I put the other one in Alice Springs. So if that's there, then this has to be also there. So it's A. In a way similar to Freo Bulldogs. Yes, it was. Yeah, all right. With that high scoring, massive margin. GWS versus Sydney. Um, we're going to put this one... It's similar to the first one, but they were further behind GWS and then they came back. Gonna put it like there, something like that. Melbourne versus North Melbourne. What do you reckon there? Something like that. Hardly. North came storming back. Yeah, the last quarter, there were no behinds in the second half of that game, which is quite something. So, quite an unusual one. But yeah. Essendon versus the West Coast Eagles. This is a tricky one. I'm going to put it in the... enough to be in C, but inevitable result happens. Low in C. Quite high scoring, which gives it bonus, but... it was closer than 30 points indicates, so maybe I should put it a bit higher. Then again, if Geelong Richmond's there in C, then it definitely should be at least above that, probably. So yeah, I'll put it there. Surprised about the number of games in E. Well, I guess I guess it sort of makes sense that there'd be more in E and A, because E's a lot of those really boring games that are not quite bad enough to be F, as in it took a while for the team that won easily to get on top, or it was just an all-round, just boring spectacle. Fremantle Gold Coast, somewhere right in the C's, somewhere like that. Don't think there's much more discussion required for that one. Brisbane versus Melbourne. Nice. Right in the middle of A. Good winning goal in that. But, yeah. I was surprised that Melbourne made that much of a game of it. So, yeah. Right there. North Melbourne versus the Western Bulldogs. This one goes... in the C's. Only 17 points, but North were never really going to win it, and were never really close to winning it. So I'll put it like there. Sydney versus Fremantle. That's probably it's up there. Might even put it there. AFL legend saying top of A. That was a huge upset. That was a huge upset because Sydney looked to be so invincible, and particularly at the SCG. 1 point game, shot after the siren. So yeah, S tier. And Holly says facts. So yeah, I don't know. I think it should be there though, probably. Gold Coast versus Collingwood. Right there. Low A. Well, there was a kick after the siren, so fair, yeah. So, realistically, it was one of the best games. Adelaide versus GWS. This was an upset and come from behind and wasn't really close in the end, so hard to analyse, but I'm going to put it top of C. Top of C? Funny game. A funny game, that one. It always looked like Adelaide would win when it got into the last quarter, but yeah. It's a B, says Mel. Welcome to the stream, by the way, Mel. But I don't know. I don't quite think it is a B. I don't quite think it is. Geelong versus Essendon, another controversial game with Essendon complaining about the umpires quite a bit in that one. Top of D is what I'm thinking. Because it was a good game for a while and then it sort of got away then in the third quarter and then Geelong piled it on from there. C easily, says Mel. I don't think so. I think every single one of those games in C was a better game, probably. St Kilda, Port Adelaide. Low A's, I'm thinking. Something like that. Maybe a couple higher. Maybe like there. There. I'm going to put it there. So low-ish A's. Carlton defeating Richmond. I'm going to put this one... in the E's. Lowish E's, probably. But enough to get there. West Coast versus Hawthorn. AFL Legend straight off the bat has said F. It's funny though, it is very similar to like some of those ones I put lowish in E, like your North Melbourne Adelaides or your Hawthorn Melbournes. It's a lot like Hawthorn Melbourne. That's one game it's a lot like. So I'm going to put it just behind there in the low-ish E's. Because it's one of those games where people... Because it's one of those games, if like West Coast were given a decent chance in that, particularly at home. So it's sort of like... It's hard to put it as bad as the games where, like, you know, even before the game, it was sort of, you know, everyone knew who would win. Essendon beating Collingwood in an upset on Friday Night Football at the MCG. Top of B. Because the margin was flattering in the end. Maybe it's probably not. It's probably more like there, not very top of B. Then again, maybe it should just be average in B, but I'll just leave it there. North Melbourne versus Gold Coast. Good win by the Kangas. Gold Coast still failing to win away. Realistically, it's good enough to slot right in there. Good game of football. Good game of football. Port Adelaide versus the Western Bulldogs. That was... The Bulldogs were the favourite in that. And did not turn up at all. It's just right in the mix with some of these E's. Put it there. Something like that. But yeah. Alright. Let's keep going. Jacob Lewis is saying, "Hey, just to Rory Woods. Thanks for saying hi to me, Jacob Lewis." But anyway, Geelong versus Hawthorn. Another pretty rubbish game. It's just not good enough to be anything better than. Oh, thank you. Hey, Jacob. Thank you. Just somewhere there, I'd say. Yeah, we did not turn up for that one. GWS versus Carlton. We'll put this one. Another massively seesawing game. Not close enough in the end to be an A, I don't think, because Carlton came back a bit late to get it to 2 goals. So, top of B. Very top of B. Fremantle Richmond, another E straight away. That's just there. Melbourne versus West Coast. Same sort of thing. Put them right next to each other. Because why not? Yeah, that's right there. You've missed so much, this Tigers Prime. Well, you can catch up, just look at it quickly. St Kilda versus Sydney. This one, I'm going to put Melbourne versus West Coast worst game of the year. On what basis? I mean, it was a team with no finals, no hype, sort of, with Melbourne. I'm not going to say no finals chances there. That was much needed win for their finals chances at that stage. Most boring. I mean, it's no more boring than... Yeah, it's sort of a nothing game, though, isn't it? 20k crowd. Bit of a nothing game. Anyway, St Kilda, Sydney... Right there. Another big upset. Another good game. S tier. Brisbane versus Adelaide. I'm going to put this one near the top of B. 11 points only, but Adelaide never really looked like winning. So, Port Melbourne shit game. Yeah. Which one? They were both... I'm assuming you mean the second one that was low scoring, but yeah. Collingwood versus Geelong. What do we reckon? Maybe slightly higher. There. Top of C. Hawthorn versus Fremantle. I reckon that's enough to be an A with some of the ones down there. So I'm going to put it... like there probably. It was 13 points, but a couple of late goals. Yeah, Port Melbourne is the best suburb. Yeah, I know. I mean, I was thinking of the suburb when he said Port Melbourne. Sydney versus North Melbourne. I don't know if it's the best suburb, but I know, as in I thought of the suburb. Sydney versus North. We haven't had one for a while. That is quite low. Western Bulldogs versus Carlton. Very good game. This was an upset at the time. So yeah, I'm going to put this near the bottom of A even. Decently high scoring. You live in Port Melbourne, do you now? Good stuff. Reckon A is a Doggies fan. Yeah, I reckon it just sneaks into A. Tigers Prime saying don't say that. What is it? They're going to be someone knocking on every door in Port Melbourne and they're going to find him. Adelaide versus St Kilda. With that being said, you shouldn't say too much about your private details, but I don't know. Is that really that bad to just say the suburb? Adelaide. I mean, people could track him down if they really wanted to, but if they put in a lot of effort. But anyway, Adelaide versus St Kilda. It's just somewhere there. Probably lower. Just put it there for the sake of it. Melbourne versus Essendon. An unusual game, this one. Hasn't quite earned the right to be a B, I don't think. So I think I'm just going to pop it there. Gold Coast versus Port Adelaide. I'm going to put this very bottom of B. Yeah, very B game. But I put it very bottom of B just because I feel like Port were never going to win. They never looked like they were going to win at all. So, just typical Gold Coast getting the job done at home. That sort of thing. Give us a flex. Again, says unbranded. Yeah, moving on. Richmond versus GWS. Richmond put up a good fight. Inevitable result in the end. Right in the C's. That's a very C game. All right. West Coast versus Brisbane. This is enough to be a B because it was decently interesting. I'll put a there. High B. Yeah, sort of put it middle B in the end, I guess. That's very middle B, but yeah. All right, moving on. Round 19. Getting a bit quicker at this now. Essendon versus Adelaide. I'm going to put this in S. I'm going to put this bottom of S. Another great game. Another really great game. High scoring, ripping game of footy. It's funny how Adelaide have had quite a few of these really good games. Above Freo Collingwood. Literally, I was about to do that. I was thinking it should be above that. Just because a lot higher scoring. Probably a better game. Similar with the Adelaide-Brisbane draw, I'd say. And I guess very similar to Carlton-Adelaide. No, what? Maybe I'll put it next to Carlton Adelaide just because of how similar those two were. So I'll put it. Those are like near identical in so many ways. What do I reckon was the best final? Probably the semi-final between GWS and Brisbane, followed by the prelim between Geelong and Brisbane. GWS Gold Coast. I'll get through these less important games quicker. GWS Gold Coast is that's a real, just there. Nothing really there. St Kilda versus West Coast. Big win for St Kilda. I think that's got to be F because it's just nothing. Like, nothing there. Hawthorn Collingwood, that was a big win for us. That was really a big win. Thinking D's somewhere. Yeah. AFL Legend originally said top of E, but I think it is D. Like, I think it is better than, like, some of these games here. So, it's probably similar to Carlton Geelong, so I'll put it next to that. Because I sort of feel more comfortable putting similar games next to each other, because you've got so many different types of games. Western Bulldogs beating Geelong. Another weird one. Upset. Weird game. Very boring, the game itself. But the upset is enough to put it in D rather than E, I'd say. Port Adelaide versus Richmond. Bit of nothing. Maybe enough to be D, or probably E. I'll just put it there. Something like that. Brisbane versus Sydney. Grand final preview. Oh no, not the grand final itself. We don't want that one. We want the Brisbane versus Sydney one here. Yeah. I'll put it actually better than that. Put it there? Maybe, If only Brisbane Sydney round 19 was the grand final. Well, it would have been even more heartbreaking for you, wouldn't it? As a Sydney supporter, you wouldn't want to lose thinking you could have won. I think that's probably more saddening. Although then again, it might be better for next season for, feeling like a bit of revenge or that sort of thing. Actually, I'll put it. Actually, it's got to be higher than some of these. What do we reckon there? Yeah, I guess you would. Sort of, yeah. It's hard to compare, isn't it? Probably. I mean, as a neutral, yes, that would have been much better. Fremantle versus Melbourne. There, just another low or high E. That sort of thing. Maybe even a bit lower because Melbourne would absolutely kick the last few goals to make it look a tiny bit better, but similar to that, put it there. Carlton versus North Melbourne. This one is a low B. Low B. Hi Bailey. Hello, welcome to the live stream. Just slowly chipping through this. It's been probably 2 hours now. Josh Weller, g'day. Port versus North should be number one. Larger comeback than Blues, and Fisher from North missing a goal with 7 seconds to go, plus ultra high scoring and accurate, and mark of the year. The reason I haven't had it as high is the huge favourite one in the end. Plus, when they were 54 points down, I thought them winning was so much more likely than Carlton winning when they were 46 points down against Brisbane. So, Lions back-to-back, question mark? Maybe. Potentially. Alright, moving on, round 20. Okay, fair enough, says OP. Each to their own. I mean, that you could argue that if you're talking purely on the game itself, it very much is as good as at least as good as any other team. Which AFL team do I go for? Hawthorn. Carlton versus Port Adelaide in round 20. I'm thinking, right in there. Yeah. That's what I'd say. I'd say there. Then again, I'm just looking at this, like, this might be a bit high. Like, something like that might be better there. Or even, like, there, or something like that. Just put it there. Hawks versus Port for gather round next year. There's a very good chance of that. I definitely would not be surprised by that at all. We're very much the sort of team that they'd... Favourite AFL player. I've said before I don't have one. I'll just say someone I like just for the sake of it. Dylan Moore. I like Dylan Moore. He's someone I like. North Melbourne, Geelong. Somewhere like that. Maybe a little bit higher. Probably there. Do you have any good Brisbane players? Brandon Ryan. Who's a Brisbane player? That's alright. It's funny, I don't dislike any Brisbane players that much, really. It's sort of hard. Gold Coast versus Brisbane. Gonna put it somewhere just nicely here. St Kilda versus Essendon. Big win for St Kilda. Really disappointing for Essendon. There. Melbourne versus GWS. 2-point game in the end, but I still think it's a low A. It's enough to be an A, but there. Maybe it's a little bit harsh. Maybe like there. But Melbourne had a late couple of goals. Do I have any good Brisbane players? Do I have any? I don't own any. If only Melbourne GWS had a crowd, it was a really good game. Yeah, it was a pretty good game. Yeah, tiny crowd, that one. Fremantle versus West Coast. Somewhere there. Collingwood, Richmond. I'm going to spend less time on these less significant games. Like, it doesn't really matter where I put this, really. But it's just sort of somewhere in the... Actually, it is worse than most of these. I will put it there, probably. Sydney versus the Western Bulldogs. Upset. Upset alert. This was an upset. You kind of sound like the people who call out the Brownlow Rose. Yeah, I've sort of half been trying to do that sometimes, deliberately, when I'm just, saying them. Have I watched every AFL game this year? Well, I've at least followed every AFL game this year, as in, check the scores and watch parts of it. Occasionally I might have watched none if I was busy, but I've at least known the general idea of each game. So Sydney versus the Western Bulldogs. Bonus points for being an upset is enough to put it there. Hi, it's you. It's me, 8119. Well, welcome. So anyway, Adelaide, Hawthorn. Good win. I was at this game and I really enjoyed it. So there you go. But realistically, it's something like that. What team do I like better, Swans or Bulldogs? That's a very, very good question. Those would be very similar. I suppose it would be very marginal either way. Maybe Sydney. Oh, probably Sydney just. Probably. Western Bulldogs versus Melbourne. D somewhere, or probably E, probably like high E. Who is my second team? I don't have a second team in terms of my the team I dislike the 17th most, if that makes sense, is probably like GWS. But yeah. What about you? Do you have a second team? Second team, Geelong, meow. We are Geelong, the greatest team of all. We are Geelong. Can't say I approve of that sort of thing. But anyway, West Coast versus Gold Coast. Right there. Maybe bonus for being an upset and was pretty close. So maybe more like there. There's no such thing as a second team. Well said. I don't have a second team, but my second favourite is Adelaide. Fair enough. What, any particular reason? Who is your and fave team? Hawthorn. Yeah, this is so jam-packed, I know. It really is. Yeah, anyway, so I've got to keep moving. Keep getting distracted by a couple of things. North Melbourne versus Richmond. I'm going to put it there. Geelong versus Adelaide. Actually, probably better than a lot of these. All right. Collingwood versus Carlton. Another good Collingwood-Carlton game. Is it better or worse than the other one? Probably marginally worse, but did have a very exciting finish. So I'll put it there, in S. Your whole family goes for Hawthorn or Sydney. Well, you picked a good one. Well done. Port Adelaide versus Sydney. Gets bonus points for being bizarre, so I'm going to put it bottom of E. So, 4 sacks next week, and I'm spending my time with Call 89, and it's me, 8119. As you should. As you should. I'm in a similar boat, and I'm doing this thing for everyone. Me and my dad and younger sister could go for Hawthorn, and my mum and older sister and brother go for Sydney. Interesting. Well, good on you for going for Hawthorn. Good on you. GWS versus Hawthorn. It's probably better than a lot of these. So, I'm going to put it there. It was quite a big comeback, so maybe it should be more like here. It was a pretty good game. Put it there. I wanted the Hawks to win if it wasn't Brisbane, if I'm being honest. Well, thank you very much. That means so much to me. Essendon Fremantle. What a game. What a game. Realistically, this was a great game. I'm going to put it in... I don't even care. I'm putting it in S, everyone. Sue me. I'm putting it in S. The bottom of S, but very, very good game of football. Very good game. St Kilda versus Brisbane. Boring. Absolutely horrendous game. The Hawks win the flag in 2025? I sure hope so. I don't want to put any bad karma out there, but I hope so. Or I hope we don't fall off or something. That would be very not good. Sydney versus Collingwood, another great game. Really good game. I'll put it there. Brisbane versus GWS, another good game. Gonna put it very bottom of A, just because it's like it felt like such a significant game, such a bizarre game in the way it turned, and yeah, North Melbourne versus West Coast. Ooh, that's got to be at least an A. That's a very good game. That is a very, very good game. I'll put it there. What a crazy finish. I mean, if it was two close teams, it would be an S, but it was two, like, if it meant something, always continue on in 2024 is good commentary line. You reckon? There you are. Hawthorn versus Carlton Grand Final. Hawks 151, Carlton 74. I'd take it. I'd take that. Definitely. How on earth do you predict that? North versus West Coast was Carlton versus Collingwood. It'd be game of the year. I know, but it's just, it meant absolutely nothing, didn't it? So, it's just, we'll put it there. It was a brilliant game. It really was a brilliant game. Maybe that's a bit high just because I don't know. Anyway. Fremantle versus Geelong. Next year we hear James Brayshaw saying Hawthorn are premiers, mark my words. We'll see. That'd be good. Fremantle versus Geelong. I think that's... Actually, no. Maybe more like there. Essendon versus... Essendon versus Gold Coast. I'm putting this in S tier, ladies and gentlemen. In between the Carlton and Collingwoods. Melbourne versus Port. Weird game, low scoring game, but close. Close enough to, give it some sort of something. Put it there. Carlton versus Hawthorn. Really weird game. Carlton got a lot of injuries during it, but really can't be higher than like somewhere down here. Richmond versus St Kilda. Boring. Nothing. Just whatever. Yeah, just anywhere down there works. Adelaide versus the Western Bulldogs. This one will go It's enough to be C, I'd say. Similar to that sort of thing. Might be slightly higher. Yeah, like there. If I went to see an AFL game in IRL, I've seen many AFL games IRL. I don't miss Hawthorn games in Victoria. I go to a lot of interstate. I love the footy. Can't get enough of it. Dylan is goofy, says footy flicks too. Jeez. Careful, you might upset him. Essendon versus Sydney. Top of D. Gold Coast versus Melbourne. This was an upset. This was a weird game. Somewhere like that. Fremantle, GWS versus Fremantle. Another pretty good game. Collingwood versus Brisbane. Melbourne games are the worst. Fair enough. Jeez. Everyone, better wrap this up quickly because I've got to get myself to Burwood Macca's at 10:30. This is going to be exciting times, everyone. Please do not rate it S tier. If you insist, I'll put it very top of A. Port Adelaide versus Adelaide. Probably belongs in with this mix here. St Kilda versus Geelong. That one's going to be... high-ish around here. Then again, I'm looking at this. That probably shouldn't be quite there. That should be more like there. I will put it top of B. Anyway, let's see what's happening in chat. I think it deserved to be S. Maybe it did. It's probably more significant than that, so... Actually, I do think it is very top of A. That's what I reckon. It's either very top of A or bottom of S. It's that sort of thing. Oh, jeez. These two not getting along in chat. Western Bulldogs versus North Melbourne. F. Hawthorn versus Richmond. Realistically, I think that is an F. So I'll put it there. West Coast versus Carlton. Very bottom of E. Melbourne versus Collingwood. About there. Hawthorn versus North Melbourne. We're giving it the 100-point bonus and putting it in E. Because 100 points is more interesting, we're saying, than end of the home and away season, the games fell away. Yeah, quite a few did. Geelong versus West Coast. This was really... I mean, the second half of this game which is an absolute shocker. Dylan Rose so bad, it's crazy. Whew. Jeez. There's a lot of tension in this chat right now. Alright. Richmond versus Gold Coast. I'm going to put it like there, probably. Brisbane versus Essendon. Ran there. Low in B. Sydney versus Adelaide. Not much really noteworthy there. Just sort of pretty C game of football, probably. Without being a complete dud. Western Bulldogs versus GWS. Somewhere in the C's here. She's probably a bit lower than these. Put it right there. Actually there. Alright. Carlton versus St Kilda. Brilliant game. Here's that. I'm putting it in between the draws. Again, maybe this should be... I do think probably this should be S. Put it there. Similar with that. Just behind it because it didn't have quite the finish in the same way with the goal like that. But late comeback, good game. Fremantle Port, somewhere with these low Bs. All right. We're into the finals, ladies and gentlemen. So we're nearly done. Nearly done, everyone. Everyone in chat seems to be a bit animated, which is adding quite the entertainment to my night. But anyway, we'll get into the finals now and then wrap this up and let everyone get themselves to Burwood Maccas. All right. We'll do them in order of when they happen, these finals. Port Adelaide versus Geelong. I'm not going to give a finals bonus. I think it's just rubbish, really. I think underdog bonus, we'll give them an E. We'll give it an E for the underdog bonus. Yeah, Port Geelong E, says AFL legend. Western Bulldogs versus Hawthorn. My favourite game of the year. C somewhere? Somewhere in these C's. Put it there. Low C or high D, yeah. I've got it middle to low C. It's S, says Footyflix 2. If I was doing this biasedly, maybe I would do that, but... Alright, Sydney versus GWS, S. Straight away, S. Probably there. It's because a final and a big comeback and a... Yeah. You meant to say S. Yeah, fair enough. There's no doubt that one's an S, so... Do Brisbane Carlton S? Maybe not. I think I'm going to give it a a low C. Because it was so boring. I mean, it was game over, really. Probably it was, but low C. Somewhere like there. Into the second week of the finals, everyone. Yeah, I did say that. That's true. I did say you'd get a mod if you stuck around. So, just because you really want it, I'll give you a mod. Add as moderator. But don't abuse your power, or else you might lose it. So, that should have... Yeah, there you go. Rest Brisbane finals, except GF is an S tier in my opinion. Yeah, they definitely will be. Port Adelaide versus Hawthorn. That's got to be S because it's a close final and that sort of thing. I'm going to put it like there. Probably wasn't as good as Sydney GWS in terms of the game itself. Jay says he will abuse the power. Well, you're not getting a mod then, Jay. Don't even know what a mod is. Would be hilarious giving it to me instead. Well, the thing is, mods can do a couple things. But mostly it's just sort of like a nice little decoration, I guess. Anyway, GWS versus Brisbane. Bang. The second game of the season was still number one up until that point, but it's now been overtaken. Overthrown. Might even put Brisbane Sydney a little bit higher, like there. But, I might have to... the top, I think I'm happy with the top as it is now. Prelims. Sydney versus Port. Low C's. There. Geelong versus Brisbane. Bang. Second best game of the year. Gonna give yourself a new profile picture. Good thinking. Fair enough. Alright. We're up to the grand final, everyone. It's been a long night. It's been 2.5 hours, so it's really similar length to what a live stream for the Geelong vs Brisbane was the game of the year, in my opinion. It's one of those two. They're sort of in their own different ways. I mean, if we're talking purely on the game, you'd probably say GWS Brisbane, but the atmosphere and the comeback and the fact that they were, an underdog prelim and that was a ripping game. That was a ripping game. Both of them were great. B tier Brisbane because of Brisbane's skill. Interesting. The grand final, we're going to finish it off with, and we're going to put it... Where does the grand final go? It just goes somewhere right about there. And that's it. Granny's probably a C. I don't think it's a C. It was not good enough to be a C. But yeah. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. I might just wrap it up just there. Wow, only now just finished. I know, Saurus. I know. But yeah. Just having a final check. Jeez, off to Burwood Maccas, everyone. Maybe we should all go there. Maybe, I'll finish this now and we'll all just go to Burwood Maccas. Yeah, Grand Final F says AFL edits. it gets the upsets bonus because it was an underdog winning, and in F, none of the Fs are underdogs winning. So I don't think I've done that. But yeah, that should be it. Thank you all for tuning in. Am I going to make a vid based on the best games of 2024? I might do. I might. There's a good chance of that. Yeah, probably should. Can't wait to roll this champ. Dylan Saurus will 100% be there. Saurus, aren't you in Adelaide? How are you going to make it to Burwood in time? Great stream. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Cool89 or Cool89. But thank you. Yeah. You are cool, my friend. Yeah. Might just wrap it up there. Book the plane ride. Might have to be a quick plane. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. We'll wrap it up there. Take your final look at the tier list. But yeah. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Time to go to Burwood Maccas. My editing is 10 out of 10. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Footy Flicks. Up the Hawks. See you in Burwood. Good on you, everyone, for spending your night here. And, yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.